Story 1. My husband and I think we dodged a serial killer. 2 years ago in the winter, my husband and I bought and moved to a farm in a small town in Appalachia. We decided to go down to our local Tractor Supply to buy a propane tank. As we were in the checkout line, a man, in his late 50s I assume, walked in and stared at us. He grabbed a random women's shirt off a shelf, then turned back, stared at us some more, and stood behind us in line. He stood so close I could feel his breath on my neck. I was extremely uncomfortable, but I figured it's a small town so everyone is just overly nice, so I turned toward him, smiled, nodded, and said good morning, hoping the man would feel as uncomfortable as I did and back up a bit. He did not. He started talking to us. Initially starting with pleasant small talk, the weather is getting quite cold, this line is taking forever, telling us about him picking up his great aunt from the airport in 2 hours, etc. Then quickly going into more intrusive territory. Where are you guys from? Where are you living now? How old are you guys? For context, though I was in my late 20s and my husband was only a few years behind me, our baby faces could have easily passed for 20 to 21. When it was our turn to check out, I said, "Have a good day," to the man and went up to the register. As the guy behind the register started to explain their propane pricing, the man started to flip out. I mean, he started yelling at the poor 17-year-old kid working his weekend job, saying, "I can't believe y'all are charging them so much for a propane tank, and they're a young newlywed couple, why can't you give them a break?" He just kept going on and on, cussing beneath his breath at the guy behind the counter. Then he once again turned to us. "Hey, I have a 100-pound tank I'm not using at my house. I'll let y'all have it for free if you want, you'll just need to come with me." My husband thanked him but declined. He said, "Are you sure? My house is only 20 minutes from here, I could even give you 2 tanks. Again my husband declined. He continued, "We have to do it now though because I have to go to the airport and leave town in 2 hours. This was a slip-up we hadn't noticed until we got home later that day. At this point I said, "No thank you," in a bit more assertive tone. Getting what I assumed was annoyed, he dropped his items and stormed out. As we went outside to go get our tank filled up, the man pulled up into a parking spot next to the fill-up area in his pickup truck. He got out and went back at it. "You should really think about getting a second tank, it'll save you a trip and would last you longer," he continued. "If you don't want to both go, only one of y'all can just come and ride with me and the other can meet me at my place." I replied, "No thank you, we're good." Then he said, "Come on, it's a small town, it's safe, I would never hurt such a lovely young couple." At this point the outdoor employee came out of the propane area and told him to get the fuck out of there and to stop bothering us. So he got in his truck that did not have a license plate and drove off. The other day while filling our tank up, the guy helping us asked us about that day and if we ever saw the guy again. Apparently he comes by in the winters when it's quiet and only talks to young couples. Major creepy vibes. Story 2. He got off on my floor, followed me and then called my room. This happened when I was 16 during a family vacation in Turkey. We were staying at a fancy all-inclusive resort, 5 stars, big hotel complex, nice place overall. Everything was great until one evening after dinner. We were going to head out again later that night, and I realized I had left my jacket in the room, so I went back alone to grab it. I took the elevator, and right before the doors closed, a man stepped in with me. I pressed the button for the 3rd floor. He didn't press anything. When the elevator stopped, I got off, and so did he. I started walking down the long hallway toward our room. It was a big, winding hotel layout with lots of branching corridors. But as I walked, I could feel him behind me, getting closer and closer. My gut suddenly screamed, "If you don't run now, you're going to die." I've never felt dread like that in my life. So I sprinted the last stretch to our room, slammed the door shut and just stood there trying to catch my breath. I was shaken, but I figured that was it. Creepy guy, overactive imagination, nothing actually happened, right? Wrong. I stayed in the room for a bit, trying to calm down. Then, just as I was thinking about heading back out, the hotel phone rang. I picked it up. It was a man's voice. He told me I was beautiful. I started asking my name. I was in shock. He started telling me about the disgusting things he wanted to do to me. It was pretty vile and explicit. I hung up immediately. My heart was racing. I was crying and trembling. And then the phone rang again and again. Non-stop. That's when it hit me. He saw which room I went into. Despite me sprinting, he'd still managed to track exactly where I was staying, and that was all he needed to call the room. I didn't want to leave the room because I was too scared. I couldn't stop imagining him waiting just outside, or finding another way in. I felt completely trapped. Eventually, after I didn't show up, my parents became worried and came back to the room. My dad walked in just as the phone rang again. This time he picked it up. The moment my dad said hello, the line went dead. The guy didn't call again. I never saw him again. The hotel was big enough that maybe he was staying in a different wing, we'll never know. My parents kind of brushed it off. They told me not to make drama, that creepy stuff happens sometimes and it's over now, so let's move on. To this day, 12 years later, dim and/or quiet hotel hallways make me feel incredibly uneasy, and I hate walking to hotel rooms on my own. Story 3. My elderly patient and her housemate tried to recruit me into a massage business. This happened a little while ago. I, 24F, am a physical therapist who visits mostly elderly patients in their homes to give them treatment, rehabilitation, etc. I had been seeing one of my patients, Lynn, 82F, every week for around 3 months without issue. Each week I would arrive at the government housing apartment Lynn lived in, sign in with the security guards at the front desk, and then take the elevator up to her floor. Lynn lived with a friend, Peter, 64M, and both of them spoke Mandarin with very limited English. I do not speak Mandarin, so I used an interpreter for the first few appointments, and then communication was basic and we got by with general/limited small talk and demonstrations of the exercises I needed her to do. Usually Lynn answered the door when I arrived, and I would not normally see Peter at all. He would either be out or in his bedroom. However, on this day when the door opened, I was surprised to see it was Peter greeting me. Peter told me that Lynn was in the bathroom and shouldn't be long, and that I should come inside and get set up while I wait for her to be ready. This didn't raise any alarm bells, as like I said, I had been seeing Lynn for months without any concerns. Peter went back to his bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room to set up the equipment for our session. After I had finished setting up, I sat down and began waiting for Lynn to finish up in the bathroom. After only a minute or so, Peter came back out of his bedroom and began excitedly talking to me in Mandarin. I politely tried to explain that I did not understand what he was saying, as I don't speak Mandarin. He then got out his phone and pulled up a translating app, which would translate words spoken into the microphone in one language into text in the other language. For ease of telling the story, I will recount as if we were speaking directly to each other. However, for context, keep in mind this was all translated through this app. Peter straight out the gate asked me, "Do you do massage?" This slightly alarmed me, mostly because I am super paranoid and watch way too many true crime documentaries and thrillers, so I immediately thought it was suspect. But equally, I am a physical therapist, so the question could have been perfectly valid. I thought he was most likely asking on behalf of Lynn, and that maybe she wanted to have some massage alongside her exercises, which is quite normal with a lot of my patients, so I told him, "Yes, I do." This immediately turned out to be a mistake, as Peter then told me, "Perfect. My brother and I have just opened a massage shop and I want you to work for me." I politely declined his offer, saying I was happy with my current job and not looking for any more work. Peter then insisted and said I was a beautiful girl and perfect for the job. I kept declining and tried to stay as polite as possible. This continued for around 10 minutes. He would not seem to take no for an answer, and I began to feel extremely uncomfortable. It got to the point where I played it off as if the translations didn't make sense and I couldn't understand what he was saying, and was praying that my patient would come out of the bathroom so the interaction would end. Finally, my patient came out of the bathroom, and for a second I felt immense relief, thinking, great, we can start our session now and this man will leave me alone. This relief, however, was short-lived, as she immediately asked me if I was going to work in the massage shop. I told her no, I am not, and gave her the same spiel I gave Peter over and over. They finally dropped it and we started our session. I gestured Lynn to sit down in the chair I had set up opposite my chair and started leading Lynn through her exercises. Peter sat behind me on the couch, which was approximately 2 m away. I was still a little on edge after the conversation earlier and was a bit uncomfortable that Peter was sitting behind me. As I said, he normally would be in his bedroom, but I started to relax as it seemed that the topic was dropped and things were somewhat back to normal. I told myself that I was just being paranoid and they probably did just genuinely want a new employee to get their business started. About 5 minutes later there was a knock at the door. Whoever was at the door let themselves straight in, entered the living room and stood over Lynn and I. He looked to be a younger man, maybe mid-30s, so I was thinking it was likely a relative of Lynn or Peter. Oddly though, he did not so much as say hello to either Lynn or Peter or announce his reason for being there. He simply stood there, staring at me. This is where I started to stop doubting myself that something very weird was going down. Lynn stopped doing her exercises and asked the man, "What do you think?" gesturing towards me. The man simply replied with, "Beautiful, she's perfect." Obviously at this point every goddamn alarm bell in my brain and body is ringing and telling me to get out of there, but for some reason I froze. I just kept sitting there, mind racing and wondering how I could get out of this situation. I think in the back of my mind I still wasn't sure if I would be overreacting to get up and leave. Obviously in hindsight I absolutely should have just done this. The man then sat with Peter behind me and all three of them began speaking in Mandarin. I could understand a few words that Lynn said in English speckled throughout the slew of Mandarin, and they all related to things about me, my name, my age, the fact that I have a sister, the fact that my family lives overseas, etc., that I had told her during the small talk we had made over the past few months. The man then got up and asked me for my WhatsApp. I told him I don't use WhatsApp and he then asked me for my WeChat. Again I told him I don't use WeChat. I know I should have been long gone by this point. He then continued to ask about various communication platforms and finally I got the courage to get up and leave. I got up very suddenly and simply said, "Sorry, I'm running late, I have to go," and dashed out of there and down the elevator as quickly as I could without looking back. Once I got downstairs and outside of the building I rushed straight to my car, which was parked slightly up the street, and was sitting there trying to process/make sense of what had just happened when out comes the younger man from the same exit I had just left through. He looked each way as though looking to see which direction I had headed in, and then after not seeing any sign of me ultimately walked off, in the opposite direction to where I was parked thankfully. I then called my manager and told her the entire story and she agreed that I would never be going back there, nor would any of our other staff. I still don't know exactly what these people's intentions were with me. Maybe it was just a super inappropriate attempt at a job offer, but there were so many red flags about this situation that I am just grateful I was able to get out of there when I did. Story 4. I can't shake the feeling something bad could have happened to me with a customer that was a favorite in our store. I, F31, was alone at work the other night when a customer came walking in through our back door. I thought it was strange but let it go and helped him with his purchase and we chatted. He's a regular customer I get along with. He went to leave and asked me if I wanted him to make sure the door he came through was actually closed at the time, and I said yes please. So he leaves and I hear the door open and close loudly 2 times as if he was ensuring me he was slamming it closed. I called my BF and put him on speaker to let him know I was going to be later than usual due to the last-minute customer. We are talking when all of a sudden the same customer I thought had left comes around the corner from our back room to ask me a follow-up question about something really trivial. I thought he had left. I have no idea what he was doing back there between the 2 door slams I heard and me talking on the phone, but he must have been just standing back there for whatever reason. After that I could not shake the feeling that something bad could have happened to me. 80% of my brain is telling me I'm overreacting, that man wouldn't do anything to me. Then the other 20% just can't stop wondering what the fuck all that was about, and I am creeped out. Update, I did tell my boss the next day about it. She had me go pick up a doorbell from the nearest Lowe's so our delivery drivers can ring it for deliveries because our back door is staying locked for now on. My boss wanted to say something to him the next time he came in, but I told her for us to just let it go. We have prevented it from happening again. My ASM wants to tell him about himself and how he needs to be more self-aware and a lot less comfortable around there. Thank you everyone for validating that small voice inside me that was absolutely not okay with what happened. The part one can't get past is the pretending to slam the door closed and what may have happened had I just walked back there all willy-nilly. Story 5. Something about this guy in my apartment building doesn't feel right. Not really sure where to post this, but whatever. Just need to get it off my chest. I live in a pretty average apartment complex. Nothing fancy, 3 floors, kinda quiet. I've been here a little over a year now and most people keep to themselves. Say hi in the hall, take out the trash, that's it. A few weeks ago this new guy moved into the unit across from mine. Early 30s maybe? Thin, buzz cut, always wearing this same gray hoodie even when it was hot out. I didn't really think much of him at first. People come and go here. He leaves his door open sometimes. Not like open, but cracked. Just enough to see the light on inside. Never any noise. No TV, no talking. I've never seen anyone go in or out except him. One time I was taking the trash out around 1 a.m. and he was just standing in the hallway. Not doing anything. No phone. Just standing by his door, staring at the floor like he was waiting for something. I said, "Hey," and he didn't even flinch. Just kept standing there like I wasn't there. I walked past him and felt my skin crawl, like when you know someone's watching you. Fast forward to last night, I woke up around 3 a.m. cause I heard this soft knocking. Not loud, just a few taps, spaced out. I thought it was my door, but when I looked through the peephole, no one was there. I stood there for a second, and right as I started to turn away, I heard it again. This time, it sounded like it was coming from inside the hallway. Just slow, spaced out knocks, like someone testing how quiet they could be. I opened the door and looked out. Nothing. But his door was open again. A little wider than usual. I couldn't see anything inside, just darkness. I didn't go any closer. Closed my door, locked everything, sat in my living room with the lights on like a dumbass for an hour before going back to bed. He didn't leave his apartment at all today. I know because I stayed home from work just to see. No movement, no sound. Just the door, shut tight now. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but something about him just feels wrong. Like he's pretending to be normal but doesn't actually know how. I don't know. Should I say something to management? Cups? Feels dumb, but I've got this feeling in my chest that won't go away. Story 6. Walmart parking lot. Let's rewind about 9 years. Back when I was 19 and still living in the town I grew up in. It wasn't the worst place in the world, but it had its share of problems. Good neighborhoods, sure, but some rougher parts too. At the time, the local Walmart hadn't quite slipped into the sketchy category yet, but it was getting close. You could feel it even if you couldn't explain it. It was a typical summer night, humid, quiet, probably around 11 p.m. Walmart was still open 24 hours back then. My buddy, we will call him Jay, and I were sitting in my car in the middle of the lot, surrounded by other parked cars, just hanging out and listening to The Human Condition by John Bellion. Talking about life. Women. Dreams. The kind of stuff 19-year-old guys talk about when they're convinced they've got the world halfway figured out. That's when I noticed her. A woman, mid-40s maybe, walking slowly toward the car. Nothing alarming at first. I assumed she was heading to her own vehicle. But she wasn't. She stopped right at my passenger window, leaned down and tapped. Tap, tap, tap. "Please help me," she said, her voice shaky. "I need your help." I cracked the window just enough to hear her over the music. Jay leaned in. "What?" he asked. "My car, it broke down," she said. "It's over there. I need help." We looked where she pointed, around the dark side of the building, near the edge of the lot. Barely lit. Shadows swallowing everything. I could see the vehicle she was talking about, a van. You know the exact van I'm talking about, windowless, white, rusted, pedo van with the side doors, everything the stranger danger PSAs always told you to avoid. Still, we were 19. Slightly into cars. Definitely into the idea of being helpful. "Where exactly is your car?" I asked again, cautiously. She gestured again. "Just over there. Please." I hesitated. "Okay, you start walking over. We'll follow you in the car." I went to lock the doors, just in case, but she moved faster. In one fluid motion, she yanked the back door handle and pulled it open. "No," she said, climbing into the back seat. "Drive over." Jay and I froze. Can you get out of the car?" I asked. "Yeah," Jay added more firmly. "Get out of the car." But she didn't move. "No. I need you to drive me. There are guys over there. They're creeping me out. Just drive me to the van. Please. I need you to drive me there. Please." Her voice was urgent, but something about it was off. Too desperate. Too rehearsed. I slid my hand down beside the seat where I kept a small breaker bar. My heart was pounding. "I'm gonna ask you one more time," I said, my voice low. "Get out of the car." And then she snapped. "I'm not getting out of this fucking car. You said you'd help me. I need you to drive me to the car, please. You promised. Drive over there. Now." I looked at Jay. His face was pale. I knew she wasn't leaving without a scene, or worse. So I did the only thing I could think of. I put the car in reverse and drove straight to the front entrance of Walmart. People were still going in and out. Bright lights. Cameras. Safety. She leaned forward. "This isn't where I told you to go. Drive to my van. Drive to the van." That slip. Our van. That's when I was done. I threw the car in park, grabbed the breaker bar, jumped out of the car and screamed, "Get the F*** out of my car. Now, **," she flinched. I looked around. Dozens of eyes were suddenly on us. Without another word, she bolted. Ran toward the van. The side door slid open before she got there. She jumped in. The van peeled out of the lot like a bat out of hell. To this day, I don't know what her endgame was. But I know it wasn't good. I was lucky. We were lucky. And now? I conceal carry. That's a story for another time, but let's just say I never want to be that unprepared again. Story 7. A suspicious car followed us home. What can we do? Hey everyone, I'm posting here because something really unsettling happened recently, and I'd appreciate any advice or thoughts. I also don't want to get too specific with the location details, so I'm just saying the general area. On the night of April 28, 2025, my mom and I were walking home from dinner in Victoria, British Columbia around 8 p.m., 9 p.m. We don't have a car, so we were walking along the side of the road when a white SUV-type vehicle showed up behind us. We moved over to let it pass, but instead, it stayed right behind us, inching along slowly. As soon as that happened, we were a little freaked out. Continuing, when we turned onto the main street near our home, the vehicle turned with us and parked across the street. The driver didn't exit or turn the car off. He just sat there. It made us uncomfortable enough that instead of going straight home, we waited for the bus and took that to avoid revealing where we lived. Over an hour later, we returned. The SUV was still there, now turned off and empty. As we passed it on foot and were coming close to our home, we were kind of behind this van parked in front of our place, so we couldn't really see the driver get back in or where he came from. We heard the car unlock and start up again. We were super freaked out, so we stayed hiding behind the van. At this point, I had mentioned to my mom that if we ducked down slightly, the driver wouldn't be able to see us go into our home. So we did that, and I made the mistake of turning off our porch light and turning it back on. A minute after that, the car drove away. And since then, we haven't had any problems. Please note that we've had suspicious behavior before, like my bike getting stolen from our backyard, and even people going into our backyard at night. Additional notes. It was a white male, like over 50 years old, with dark gray peppery hair, short but slightly overgrown. I only saw his side profile, but he looked overweight with a fuller face. No beard or glasses. And from the looks of it, he was wearing a t-shirt, not sure of the color. About the car, white SUV type / maybe Jeep. Not like the big vans but like a regular stubby car, looked like a really nice model and probably more on the expensive side. Thick black front grille, like the heavy bar on Jeeps, orange headlights, very quiet engine so it could possibly be a hybrid or electric, and I specifically remember seeing he had a document piece of paper on the dashboard sitting up. And I don't remember anything about the license plate. If anyone has any advice on the information I provided, that would be amazing. I'm really looking for an answer if this was truly someone following us and if we could possibly be being stalked, or if we are being dramatic. And any deets about what type of car that it was would be amazing. Thanks. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to mention is that I did end up looking at articles if there were any weirdos in the past in our area, and there was one article 1 to 2 years ago about a lurker ending up in people's backyards / following people. Story 8. I think enough time has passed since I quit my old job to talk about this. My coworker was a deranged stalker. At my old job, 2 of my coworkers and I had to go on a work trip. One of them was a man and the other was a Muslim woman who wore a hijab. I know, why is that relevant? Just bear with me. Everything went well at first. We just did what we were there to do. The first night, I was really tired, so when my coworkers invited me to go to dinner, I turned them down and went back to my hotel room. The next day, my male coworker was acting kind of quiet and insisted I sit in the front of the car instead of the back. Weird, but I didn't think too much of it. After our shift, my female coworker invited us to have some drinks in her room. I thought, why not? Just a couple of beers wouldn't hurt. At first, everything was fine. We drank, talked, and had fun. Then, all of a sudden, she started hitting on the male coworker, telling him he should remove his shirt. Mind you, he's happily married and so is she. I guess he got uncomfortable and told us he was going to bed, before anyone says, I should have said something. Maybe, but both of them were much older than me and this was my first job. I thought they were flirting in some weird way. Since I'm kind of awkward and didn't want her to think I wouldn't hang out alone with her, I stayed. Huge mistake. Up until then, her behavior towards me wasn't all that alarming. She started showing me pictures of her kids and family, but then she pulled up the Instagram page of some model. Not many followers, but obviously a physically attractive guy. She told me they were having an affair and that she'd soon be divorcing her husband to run away with this man. Her demeanor completely changed. She had those crazy eyes now. Now, without sounding too mean, let's just say she wasn't exactly physically attractive, so I thought, what the hell? But I didn't say anything, just kind of nodded along because WTF? Anyways, I figured she was just trying to impress me or something, so no major alarm bells yet. But then she started showing me paparazzi-style pictures of him, pics she'd clearly taken without his knowledge. Pictures of where he worked, his friends, his family, and more stalker. I felt sick to my stomach. You know that feeling when something is just wrong? Like, you know you're in danger and need to get out. She had this weird look in her eyes. Then, out of nowhere, she took off her hijab and she only had a few strands of hair. Lots of bald spots. Like something out of a horror movie. With that crazy look in her eyes, it was too much. I swear, I wish I was making it up. Y'all, my stomach dropped. Every part of me was screaming to run. So I told her I was getting kind of tired and stood up to leave. She just said, okay, in this weird flat tone. The next day, she acted completely normal. I later talked to the male coworker and asked him why he had seemed so tense after being alone with her. He just said she made a move on him. Let's just say I won't be ignoring my gut feeling ever again. Story 9. Creepy guy at Walmart. I am 18F, don't know if I said that right, and this happened last year when I was 17. My parents had sent my niece and I to Walmart to go grocery shopping because our city was going to be hit with severe weather the next day. The whole store was packed with people trying to stock up on food. We were walking in the meat section to get some beef for the dinner we had planned to make that night, and this man came up to me. He looked like he was on drugs a bit or just plain crazy, and he asked for my number. I told him that I didn't have a number and we grabbed the beef and just started walking away. He then started walking behind us and cursing me out saying, "That's a fucking lie. You got a number." So we just kinda speed walked and he laid off. My niece was scared and so was I. We then started trying to get everything else on the list and we started trying to find a register. While we were trying to find a register, he came up to me again and asked for my number and I told him I didn't have one again. He walked away angrily. When we finally found one, I noticed the man was lurking. He was in the clothes section, staring at me with an angry look. Then he walked over to the medicine section, still keeping a close eye. He was close to the exit, so I got scared, thinking he was going to try to get me outside. After we finished buying our groceries, we told an employee and she thankfully got an officer to walk us out to the car. Story 10. Camping encounter. To preface, this isn't exactly my story as I was very young, but I was present for this. Most details come directly from my dad, who was the main person this story affected. When I, M22, was about 8 and my brother, M23, was 9, our dad had us actively involved in Boy Scouts. It was very common for us as Boy Scouts at the end of each year to have a group camping trip. This particular year, we all camped on a local farmland with a pond and we were able to fish, roast marshmallows, etc. Typical Boy Scout stuff. There were about 10 adults and 20+ kids under the age of 10. Eventually we all decided to hit the hay. Each camper resigned to their respective tent. My dad, brother, and I all got cozy in our big blue tent and got ready for bed. Mind you, this was in the 2010s, where having any form of smartphone was still very new and in some ways a wealthy privilege. This was not the case for my family. My dad had a very basic flip phone at the time. At around 2 to 3 a.m., we were all abruptly awoken by the sound of what sounded like someone unzipping the flap on our tent. When I initially awoke, I assumed it was my dad either grabbing something from our car, using the restroom, another camp dad, etc. It turns out it was not my dad as I quickly saw him right next to me. Next thing I knew, an unknown woman was loudly whispering asking if we had a cell phone she could use. At this point I was so freaked out that I woke my dad up. He quickly asked her what she wanted and she asked for his phone. He recalls giving her his phone, potentially thinking it could be domestic violence, stalker, etc. He is a great dad and makes sure women are always safe and taken care of. He told me he tried not to listen to her phone call because he did not want to snoop on what was going on, but recalls her mentioning one thing he couldn't really avoid. She was on the phone and mentioned how she had just escaped from the back of a police cruiser and needed a place to hide out. This woman was on the run and currently using my dad's phone to call her escape route. Crazy. Side note, we still call our dad an accomplice and he always laughs. After she had left, my dad immediately called the law enforcement and told them. Get this. They didn't realize she left their police vehicle. They thought she was still there. Again, crazy. Anyways, my dad let her go because he was worried about the safety of the kids present, but they ended up catching her again later and coming back to our campground to let us know. The funniest bit was that my dad recalls her holding his phone weird while she used it. Reminder, we were on unused farmland in the middle of the night. It was pitch black. We realized later, this woman was in handcuffs the whole time and he just thought she was holding her hands weird. My dad handed a woman on the run, in handcuffs, his cell phone so that she could call someone to help her escape. At the moment, terrifying. But hilarious story of how my dad tried to help a lady and accidentally chose the wrong one to help. Hope this made you chuckle like I did. Would love to answer any more questions if you guys have any. Story 11. Got spooked while alone at school. I am a music student at a small town university in Canada. Since I was staying the summer and not going back home, I asked the director of my program for a key to a rehearsal room so that I could stay fresh over the summer and have a designated practice space. The building is very old, musty, and has so many hallways, open spaces, practice/green rooms, stairwells, etc. It sits near a walking trail in the woods, on the other side of a marsh, and then a large basin that leads into the ocean. I had classes in this building during my first term and have spent a lot of time there. I never once felt uneasy while spending time alone in the building, whether during the day or at night. Sometimes I would stay and play music until 1 or 2 in the morning and would only ever see security doing their 11 p.m. patrol. Never had an issue and they always announced their presence if knocking or coming around a corner where they were out of sight. The other night, I was in this large room that I cleaned and converted into a sort of studio/rehearsal space. It used to be a woodshop for theater students. There are 2 ways in. Through a main, large double door that leads into the common area, fire exit, main auditorium and theater, etc. The other entrance is through the percussion room door, which is then secured by another door. Basically, when I'm in there, I'm locked in from both ends. The other night while I was practicing, I heard a door open from out in the hallway and just assumed it was another one of the 5-ish students who are also staying over the summer. No big deal. A little while after that, I heard some of the music students returning gear from a show they played that evening. No big deal. One of them even came and knocked and announced themselves, just wanting to say hello, knowing that I was in that big room rehearsing because I had a lamp on. A few hours after that, probably around 1:30 a.m., I started to wind down and pack things up. I'm not supposed to be in there that late, but I have an important show coming up and have been practicing hard. I'm sitting down near the large double door and I can hear footsteps on the other side. I sort of freeze up and stop what I'm doing, just to listen. There is a square hole in the wall, probably 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet where I assume an exhaust vent used to be installed to remove sawdust and all that when the theater students would be building props. While cleaning the room and turning it into my rehearsal space, I put a thin piece of plastic over this hole. Not for any reason, I just found it while cleaning and was like, huh, that would fit right in the hole. So, I put it there. As I'm sitting in the chair and continue to quietly listen, staring at the door, I literally see someone bend down and look into the hole, into the practice room at me, and then quickly straighten back up and out of sight. The hole is probably at thigh height. I was so focused on the door and looking at the crack underneath that I only caught this person out of the corner of my eye, and then they quickly moved away from it, so I barely saw who it was, but they were wearing brown and had black hair. No other student matches that description, and security would not do that. They are pretty hard asses and always announce themselves, demand I open up, show student ID, etc., especially not at 1:30 a.m. They would have for sure kicked me out and probably would have been pissed I was there at that time. I froze. Not knowing what to do, I nervously just asked, "Hello? Who's that?" And nobody answered. I felt so creeped out and spooked that I just sat there in absolute silence, waiting for a sound or someone to be like, "Oh hey, it's just me, I'm fucking around with you." But nothing. I literally sat there for like 5 to 10 minutes, looking around quietly, goosebumps, just spooked. After 5 to 10 minutes, I could hear the sound of someone walking away towards the front of the building, like the sound of jeans rubbing together as they were walking and a jacket and all that. I packed up so fast, leaving most of my music stuff set up, and just exited through the main door and out the fire exit as fast as possible. Luckily, I live 5 minutes walk away, but I was checking over my shoulder to make sure nobody was following me. I'm sure it wasn't someone dangerous, but it freaked me out, and I know all the music students who are staying over the summer. They for sure would have said hi or something. Security would have kicked me out 100%. My only worry is that it was someone doing sneaky shit or trying to steal something from the school, or something worse. Security usually comes around 11 p.m. every night and locks all the doors. The main doors are open all day, and over the summer, anybody can just walk into the theater and wander around. I'm worried that someone was trying to sleep in there overnight and wandered in at night, found a secluded room in some long hallway and was trying to hide out. Then they heard music late at night and came down to explore. I don't know. It spooked me so bad, and now I'm afraid to stay late in practice. I should bring it up to security so that they are a little more thorough. Not saying all squatters are bad or dangerous, it was just a very eerie and unexpected, creepy encounter. This is 100% true, and I never come on this subreddit. Enjoy. Edit. Went to school yesterday in the afternoon and all the doors were locked. I called security and then immediately asked me what I was doing there suspiciously. Perhaps questioning if I was a student or not. I had to go to security with my ID and get my keycard updated. They didn't mention anything, but I have a hunch that they did catch someone in there, and now the doors are locked all the time. Story 12. Weird encounter a decade ago. This is pretty tame compared to some of the other stories I've seen here, but it's been on my mind recently. Back in 2015 or 16, I was working for a startup in SF and living in Berkeley when I had a weird encounter at a corner store. I'm from New York and drove my car across the country to have with me. It still had my New York plates on it. I stopped after work one day at a corner store to grab some Arizona green teas because I'm addicted, and when I parked, a black van pulled up and parked behind me. It was the exact kind of van you'd stereotype with creeps. I went in, grabbed some snacks and the tea, and this older white guy approached me. He says he saw my New York plates and was curious what brought me out here. I didn't share much besides work. He then asked if I had family in the area, which set off my alarms. I had a couple formative experiences as a kid that make me incredibly suspicious of men, and I'm generally hyper-vigilant by nature. I remember just getting out of the interaction as quickly as possible and going up to the counter. I specifically remember telling the clerk, if the cops come around asking about my murder, it was that guy. I'm 6'3" and was probably 315 pounds at the time, so I'm not exactly common prey for serial killer types, but this guy set off that instinct in me and I left. I got in my car and drove away only to notice that he left the store almost immediately after me. I don't think he bought anything, and he started following me. The van was very distinct and my guard was already up, and as I mentioned, I'm hypervigilant by nature, so I noticed this fucker behind me. I started to think that this dude was trying to follow me home to see where I lived, so I took a random left. He took the left. I took another left. He took the left. I took another left. He took the left. Finally, I completed the square around the block, and I think he got the hint that I was onto him and he stopped following me. I drove in the opposite direction and just kept driving until sundown before I went home. I even asked my landlord to swap parking spots with me so I could park off the street and out of sight. I probably should have reported suspicious behavior, but instead I just got super baked with my roommates and slept with a hammer close by. Maybe I was just being paranoid, but I've never forgotten that prey feeling I got, and it still bubbles up in my memories from time to time, as you can tell. But yeah, if someone gives you chills, I still think it's better to be paranoid and safe than sorry. Keep your head on a swivel out there. Story 13. Older woman asking intrusive questions. An older woman bumped into me at the gym and I thought I recognized her, so I asked how she was doing, but then I realized why I recognized her. For years prior at my old gym, she approached me asking a bunch of questions about if I lived alone and if I would come to her house and clean for her, but she kept emphasizing that I had to be alone, and it scared me at the time so much that I left the gym early after declining her offer. But it was already too late. She asked me if I had young children, how old they were, what school they go to, where I live, if I have family that lives close by. I started to feel nervous again and gave her fake answers to everything, but she kept asking more and more questions about if I lived alone and if I was working and stuff. She then asked me if I would go to the bathroom with her so she could ask me something and leaned in really close to me to ask, and I told her, a lie, that I only use a different bathroom that is on the other side of the gym. Then she asked another question, to which I replied, "Hey, why do you keep asking me so many questions?" And she looked really freaked out and turned completely around and ran, literally, away from me. I reported her to my gym, and I still don't know if I was right to feel so scared or not. Story 14. Dog walking encounter. During the pandemic, I lived in a flimsy apartment building next to a rather creepy, empty business parking lot with rows of bushes along the edge. My apartment door was on the ground floor and led right to the outside. There were no apartment gates or anything. Because it was an apartment, I had to walk my dog throughout the day to do his business. I would always try and take him out at least once before bed. My dog was a large dog. Think Saluki mix. Basically a skeleton with a carpet draped over it. He's a very good boy. Very loyal. One night while I was walking him before bed, I let him do business as usual and went back to the apartment. However, when I went to open the door and tried to go inside, my dog wouldn't move. I asked my dog what was up and turned around to see him staring at the bushes between the apartment and the parking lot. I figured he saw a squirrel or a rabbit, however I did find it strange that he wasn't barking. He just stood there, still and tense with his head lowered. When I followed his gaze, what I found was a masked, hooded man hiding in the bushes staring directly at us from just a few feet away. I had never felt such abject terror in my life. I froze for a couple seconds before moving toward the door, but I didn't take my eyes off the man for a second. I yelled for my roommate and told him to get the gun. We didn't actually have a gun, but that weirdo didn't know that. A few seconds after I yelled to get the gun, the man sulked away back through the bushes. I managed to get my dog inside the house, but he really didn't want to move. I have no idea what that man was doing there in those bushes, but that was the first time I ever filed a police report/tip. After that, police started hanging out in the empty parking lot behind the bushes, and I never saw the man again. From that night until the day I moved out, both me and my dog checked for people lurking in those damn bushes. Story 15. Gas station in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure if this is the right place for my experience, or if people will really even consider it creepy, but I've sat on it for a while and have decided it deserves to be shared. It creeped us out at the time. Back in fall of 2021, my now husband and I were moving from Iowa to Maryland. We were driving late into the evening to get to our halfway point in Ohio before stopping for the night. The countryside from Iowa to Ohio is barren. I believe we were in Indiana at the time. Fields for miles and miles. We were driving late, and sometime after dark we went through a thick patch of fog, and there's this horrible blood splatter on the road where it looks like someone hit an animal on the highway. Not a small amount of blood, but a lot. Must have been a deer, and it looked fresh, but there was no carcass on the road or the side of the road and no viscera, just blood. This is not the main part of this story, but it made us feel weird at the time. A little while later we needed to stop to get gas and use the bathrooms, so we drove till we found a gas station literally in the middle of nowhere. I think it was called something like Woody's. And there was a diner attached to the gas station. We pull into the parking lot and it is dark and pretty much empty. Only one truck in the parking lot. We get some gas and then park and walk up together to the station to use the bathrooms. The entryway of the gas station is filled with gambling machines and every one of them is being used by someone, even a couple preteen kids, which I thought was strange. There's also a few guys chatting to the cashier. When we walk in, the weird vibe from earlier on the road gets weirder. Everyone stares at us as we walk in. Neither of us feel comfortable as we walk towards bathrooms. At the end of the hallway that has the bathrooms, there is a glass door that looks in on the most unexpected thing. It's a dead end behind the door with a very dusty curtain in front of which has been posed a scene with mannequins that look absolutely ancient. The mannequins are displayed as a 50s family eating at a diner table being served by a waiter. A mom, dad, 2 kids and a waiter bent over them with a tray and a wide grin. I don't know entirely why, but this makes us feel incredibly unsettled. We stare for a second, noticing the dust and the flies on the table. The mannequins are ancient and peeling, looking like they might really be from the 50s. Clearly this is blocking the connecting door to the diner. I can't describe how off the vibes felt. We look at each other and use the bathrooms as fast as humanly possible. When we come out and go back into the main gas station area, it is empty. Everyone who was using the machines is gone. The guys and the cashier are gone. We weren't in the bathrooms for more than just a couple minutes. We speed walk out and get back in our car. Something was really off about that place and just the night in general. What cars did all those people come in and where did they go? What the heck was with those disgusting mannequins? Why did we feel so strange when nothing was obviously a threat? We drove the rest of the way to Ohio feeling like we had almost gotten into something we shouldn't have. I suppose none of these events in particular are what people might say are scary, but they stuck in our minds and remembering that place gives me the jeebies. Story 16. Parking lot weirdness. I was riding with my wife tonight as she was driving her van. We left Home Depot and went across the street to the gas station so she could get a drink, so there wasn't really much time to provoke this encounter. She went inside and left me in the van and she locked the doors with the remote as she walked away. About 2 minutes later, I heard something next to me and I looked over to see a guy trying to open my door. I gave him a look and he started motioning to roll the window down. He was a normal-looking guy and he seemed calm, not like a method-out tweaker. Regardless, I didn't roll down the window and just asked him what he wanted through the glass. He knocked a few times and calmly told me to roll the window down, but I just kept asking him what he wanted. After a few times, he walked around behind the van, took a pic of the license plate, got in his car with what appeared to be his wife, and drove off. So I've been weirded out about it all night. Should I be, or should I just brush it off? I'm sort of expecting to get a letter from his car insurance in a week for some hit-and-run scam or something. That's all I can think of. He tried the door, though, so maybe he was trying to rob or carjack me. It was at about 6 p.m. in broad daylight in a busy parking lot, though. Does anyone have any other ideas? Story 17. Late night walk in rural Germany gone wrong. Hey there, it's been a while since I updated my late night walk stories, but I've got a bunch collected over the past 10+ years of walking late at night in various countries and places all over the world. This one story is from a couple years ago, right after COVID had started to finally fade into the past and life started to feel vaguely normal again, for Germany sometime around mid-2022. It was around 12 a.m. and had been super quiet nights the past couple days due to heavy rains. It had stopped pouring at like 11:30 p.m. and I decided to use the short break before the next big cloud was scheduled to hit my little village at 1:30 a.m. I was expecting the usual crowd of dog owners but encountered no one until I walked to the train station of my village. Due to past incidents, I had formed the habit to stop from time to time and turn off my music completely to return my sense of hearing to the current surroundings. Luckily for me, I had just started an audio message to a uni friend of mine when I first heard the yelling. Hey! I could clearly hear a man yelling but was expecting him to be yelling after a disobedient dog which got loose from its leash. Then again, hey! But more angrier this time. And louder. I froze. I interrupted my own audio recording by stopping myself mid-sentence. Then I saw a man walking fast, raising a hand in a fist. yelling again, "Bleib stehen! Stay where you are!" Yelling and shouting while coming straight towards me. Then it hit me. He was talking to me, and he looked pissed. I commented a dry, "I think I've got a problem," towards the still ongoing audio recording before I bolted around 180 degrees and just started sprinting. In those split seconds that I looked into that man's face, I swear I saw absolute madness in that. His eyes were blank, completely devoid of any other emotion than sheer rage. At that time he was maybe 5 m away from me. I had been running frequently at that time already, so I managed a very decent sprinting speed. Within seconds I had doubled the distance between us, and since I was very familiar with the sidewalk ahead of me, I knew which potholes to avoid and which curbs to jump. I cut into my street, not caring about bringing this monster straight to my house. But then it registered with me that my mother's safety precautions were about to cost me, since she required me to double lock the front door when I left. Unlocking the door would take time. Time I knew I didn't have. I had lost my feeling for time at that moment and expected the guy to have held pace with me. But when I turned around and risked a glance at the intersection, I found it empty. But I still heard him yelling, demanding me to stop and show myself. I jumped a small fence onto county property and hid in the dense bushes of dying vegetation in late October. I waited. I panted. I tried to steady and silence my breath and heartbeat. I finally stopped the audio recording and sent it to my friend. Finally, he rounded the corner, strolling around suddenly and smiling like a lottery winner. He stopped, just meters away from me, still grinning like an idiot, mumbling to himself something about teaching people manners since no one does. He constantly scratched his nose and coughed a couple times. So harshly, I understood that he did not manage to keep my pace, and I probably had already lost him half the way I was sprinting. He abruptly turned again, prancing down the street in staggering motion, sniffing from time to time and erratically wiping his nose. He reminded me of an animal with rabies. I waited a couple more minutes and finally got out of my hiding place. I made the way back home quick and, quite literally, dirty. Once the door was safely locked behind me, I audio messaged my friend again, assuring her that I was alive and well and that I had no clue what just happened, but I felt like the guy was onto something and it would have now been pleasant to meet him, so let's not meet again. Story 18. Creepy lady in the alleyway. I've been working as a food delivery driver for about 8 months now. With how my contract works, I need at least 3 evening shifts, with 2 of those being between Friday and Sunday. I don't really mind working in the evenings since it has a nice vibe to it, being really calm. Just throw on some headphones and a good playlist or podcast and you're good. Plus, I never work for more than 4.5 hours on end since I work on an e-bike, so I can't do longer shifts without my battery dying, keeping in mind the bike needs to take me home as well. Apart from some stupid encounters I've had with teenagers trying to be funny in front of their friends, like biking after me and asking for food or pretending to be the customer, I've never had anything creepy happen to me. That was until a few weeks ago. It was a Thursday evening. I had a shift from 17:30 until 21:30. Where I live, us delivery drivers get paid per hour instead of per delivery. This has its advantages and disadvantages. One of the disadvantages being that we can't decline orders on our own end. If we, for whatever reason, can't take an order, we need to talk with the company we work for. So whatever trip is thrown at us, we have to take. Up until this point, I'd been having good, close-by deliveries from nice local restaurants. None of the journeys were to faraway places, which was good. The weather was fine. It was cold, but if you layer yourself well enough, it's not that bad as long as it just doesn't rain, which luckily, it wasn't. It was around 2015 when I got a McDonald's order. The customer lived around 12 minutes away from the restaurant, which wasn't ideal, but it was fine since I had only lost 1 stripe of battery so far. The location it was going to was also a good one, since the only time I'd need to get off the bike lane was to cross roads. Other than that, it was all bike lanes. I picked up the order after waiting for around 15 minutes. I got back onto my bike, chose a playlist, and made my way over to this customer. The streets were pretty quiet, setting the vibe. As I got closer to the customer's house, I made my way onto the sidewalk and cycled slowly, trying to find the house number, which can be a pain at night. I eventually did and locked my bike up. I walked over to the door and knocked. After a few seconds, I heard commotion and placed my bag down, taking out the food. The door opened and a lady greeted me with a smile. After handing her the food and telling her to enjoy it, she thanked me, and after giving me a tip, closed the door back up. I got back onto my bike and unlocked it. I had been charging my phone with my power bank but wanted to take the charger off since my phone was now full enough, and dealing with a wire sticking out of my jacket pocket can be a hassle when taking off and putting back on my backpack. However, I always feel awkward and watch people staying in the front yard for too long, especially when they have those doorbell cameras. So, I made my way over to a small alleyway close to the house. As I turned back off my bike, I took out my power bank to turn it off. Then I changed my playlist and as I was putting the power bank back into my pocket, I heard slow footsteps creeping closer to me from behind. Now, this alleyway I was standing in was pretty narrow and small, so I was probably blocking it. I quickly moved and got off my bike, holding it close to me as I pressed myself onto the wall. I excused myself and made a gesture for the person to pass. Instead of thanking me and walking on, the person just kept standing there. This is when I looked up. I was met with a tall, skinny lady standing just a few inches away. Her face was slim and her long hair came to rest on her shoulders. Her face looked white, and she looked like a heroin addict. She looked me dead in the eye without any expression and was breathing through her mouth. She was wearing brown jeans and a blue hoodie, with the hoodie on. "Can I help you?" I asked after painful moments of silence. She looked at me for a few more seconds and said, "You have my food." I froze. Now in our app system, there is no way to actually confirm that the customer was the right one since we don't have any security codes to ask. Since I was busy with my power bank, I hadn't clicked the finish order yet. I checked my phone and decided to ask the lady questions about the order. "Oh, I think another driver has your food. I just delivered it to someone else," I said with a smile. "Where did you order from?" If she was right, I would have been able to help her easily with getting a refund. However, she just stared at me, her expressionless face turning into a hard, ugly glare. "No," she said loudly. "That was my food," she stated. Again, I tried to reason with her, asking her for her name and what food she had ordered. "I'm just trying to help you, ma'am. Check your app. The app should tell you how far the driver is." To this, she stepped back and pointed her hand at me. "My food. I need my food." At this point, I figured she must be homeless and hungry. "I have food if you want," I said. Now, I always keep snacks on me in case I have to wait long for an order to get ready or have no orders come in for a bit. We wait a lot since we can't turn down orders for taking too long to be made. My go-to-work snacks are protein granola bars. They're easy to keep since they don't take up much space and you can eat them fast. I decided to give her a box and maybe she'd be satisfied. I took one out of my backpack and handed it to her. She took it from me, damn near snatching it out of my grip, and stepped closer. "I want my food," she stated sternly, her glare sharp. I let out a breath, getting really creeped out now, and once again asked her to check her app or give me her name, the name she put up with her so-called order. She took a big breath and before I could say anything else, she exhaled and screamed fucking bloody murder, making me flinch and press myself onto the wall. In the process, I accidentally moved my bike's throttle. This thing alone doesn't get past around 4 kilometers per hour. I had some struggle, but eventually got on the bike and pedaled away, the lady still screaming behind me. I got to a fence that prevented cars from coming in and had to slow down a bit. This was enough time for the lady to catch up and even grab onto the back of my bike. I let out a yelp as I could feel her try to push me back. I also heard something scrape the wall next to me. I didn't want to look and instead put my bike on a higher assist mode, which I normally never do and always keep on 2 or 3 to spare battery life, pedaling like my life depended on it as I got past the fences. I then put it even higher and cycled away. I could hear the lady yelling and calling me a food thief. As I glanced back, she held the box of granola bars above her head and threw them at me. They landed about a meter away from me. I also noticed what was causing that scraping noise, as she was holding a knife in her hand. I focused back on the road and cycled away, hearing the lady still screaming, yelling, and trying to run after me. Eventually, I went back to the app and finally clicked finish order, hoping to get a new one since I didn't want to aimlessly cycle around in fear of running into her, since I thought she might know all the shortcuts. I got a new order from a kebab place nearby, around 8 minutes away. This place was one I got sent to a lot, and the owner was very friendly, always asking us drivers if we wanted something to eat or drink and saying it was on the house. I got there and was slightly out of breath. He asked me what happened and gave me some water to drink and helped me calm down, then gave me some food. After I told him, he talked to the company, saying I was in no state to keep doing deliveries. My work agreed to allow me to end my shift earlier. One of my coworkers came for the pickup, and since this delivery was just outside of the city center, I biked back with him to the city center, where it was still busy, and went on home after that. I'm very glad for the timing of that order, my coworker, and for the owner of the kebab store. I don't even want to know what that lady would have done if she had successfully pulled me off my bike. Story 19. Strange lady with a knife. Hey guys, so a creepy situation happened to me a while ago. Just for context, I live in Germany and I'm 23 now, but I was 20 at the time. Now to the story. I was on my way home from a party in the city. Since I had been drinking, I took the tram. Unfortunately, I had to get off at a stop because the tram only went that far, about 3 stops from my actual destination. Since it was dark, around 1 or 2 a.m., and I didn't feel like walking through a forest, I decided to wait 45 minutes for the next tram. There were a few houses nearby, a swimming pool, and the forest. At the tram stop, no one was around. Then a woman approached me, around 50 years old, with a backpack. She seemed quite confused but not threatening. She was wearing slightly ripped jeans and shoes. She randomly asked me what my name was. I told her it was Tom, a fake name. She asked if I was also taking the tram, and I said yes. Then, out of nowhere, she sat down on the ground and started telling me this story, warning me to be careful. She said she'd had problems with some Bulgarians involved in pimping, etc. It was so random I couldn't really process it. She seemed drunk and also gave off the vibe that she might have a mental illness. Still, I felt like she needed someone to talk to, and people like that can be unpredictable, so I listened, even though it didn't feel right. She kept talking about her daughter and her son, and then later claimed she didn't even have a son, even though I had asked her how old he was. She kept circling back to the Bulgarians, like it was some kind of obsession or tic. She mentioned her daughter was a prostitute and that she didn't want that for her. She repeated that a lot. She asked if I had a girlfriend, but before I could answer, she immediately switched back to talking about her daughter again. This went on for about 25 to 30 minutes, until she asked me if I had a cigarette. I said no, and she said maybe she still had some. She started shaking out her backpack. Tissues and chains came out, and then suddenly a knife fell out of the bag. It was kind of like a small dagger. I was shocked and froze a bit. She kept looking for the cigarettes while I was thinking, shit, this is getting way too creepy. The fact that she seemed mentally unstable didn't help at all. She didn't find any cigarettes, sat back down on the ground, and just said, well, I guess we're not smoking then. The knife was lying on the ground the whole time, and I tried my best to ignore it. My instinct was to run, but I didn't think that would be a good idea. I didn't know what might happen if I tried. So I stayed calm and kept the conversation going, asking her random questions. She didn't really answer directly, just kept rambling. Eventually, she gathered her stuff and picked up the knife. She asked me if I thought it was cool or something. I just said, yeah, it's cool, or something like that. I had no idea what else to say. Then she said a sentence I'll never forget. I only used it for the Bulgarian. No one touches my daughter. She said it in a serious tone, then laughed and said it was a joke. I forced a fake laugh, but by then I was way too creeped out. Thank God the tram arrived shortly after. My goal was to sit at the very front, near the driver, just in case anything happened. But out of nowhere, she decided not to get on the tram. No idea why. She stood up, said goodbye to me, and just told me to stay the way I am. When the tram doors opened and I quickly got in, she waved at me and then disappeared behind a hedge. When I got home, I thought about it a few more times. She definitely had some mental illness, but at the same time, she was kind to me. Like she had 2 personalities. Sometimes serious, sometimes nice. I still don't know what the deal with the Bulgarian was. Maybe he didn't even exist. Maybe she lost her daughter and made this story up as a way of coping. Or maybe her daughter really was trapped in prostitution and she was planning something. I never saw that woman again, and that's probably for the best. Story 20. Psycho in a thrift store. I had a creepy encounter in a charity shop selling second-hand clothes and whatnot. 20 years ago, I was in my early 20s at university and wasn't a shy or nervous person at all, but this experience haunted me. The man did nothing wrong, but I got the strongest creep vibes I've ever felt. So I went in to browse. It's quite busy there, and whilst looking around, I spotted a man who worked there. It actually felt like he spotted me and would keep looking over, etc. I instantly felt very uncomfortable. This guy, who looked very normal, made my blood run cold and really frightened me. I tried to avoid his gaze, but something unsettled me in a way that has never happened to me before or since. A real stranger danger feeling that I wasn't used to, especially from a shop assistant. He then came over and asked if I needed any help, and a weird instinct kicked in to get the hell away from this man and fast. I said no thank you and quickly left the shop. I literally wanted to run. I was so surprised by the terror this man's presence caused me to feel. Like I said, I was quite a confident young woman, not easily spooked by people at all, but he terrified me, just a feeling I got. Throughout my life I've had my fair share of creepy guys who have been interested in me and displayed that in a weird way and never been freaked out by it, but there was something so incredibly off about him. Despite this, there were a pair of jeans I liked in there, so I made my boyfriend come with me the following day, as there was no way I was going to use the fitting room on my own with that creep there. We went in, he was there, nothing happened, and I tried on the jeans and didn't like them and left. I didn't think any more about it other than I won't be going back there again. A couple of days later, my parents visited and we were sitting having breakfast in a cafe. My dad was reading the local paper and he said, "Look at this." He turned the paper to me and there was a photo of a man who 100% happened to be the creepy man from the shop. The article was about how he had just been released from prison for stabbing his girlfriend like 14 times or something. After an incredibly short sentence, he was allowed to live and work in the same town his poor victim and her family are from, and was even given a job to help him resettle into society or whatever. It really did stay with me. I was horrified that I'd interacted with this man, but knew at that point to always trust my instincts because they were screaming at me to get away from him. Story 21. Something my neighbor said still haunts me. Even though this was almost 10 years ago now, I have never been able to get this out of my head, so I thought I'd post it here. I was about 11 or 12 years old, living in an apartment with my mom. Right across from our apartment was a very creepy neighbor. I could write a whole book about all the creepy, wild, and downright insane things he said and did throughout the 2 years he was our neighbor, but this was something that stuck with me more than anything else. My mom and this neighbor were having a casual conversation with each other, with my mom's goal being to try to find some common ground with him and clear up any misunderstandings or miscommunications that may have led him to dislike us so much, as he had a pretty blatant feeling of disdain towards us. But evidently something went wrong during this conversation, as my mom suddenly came stomping into our apartment, loudly shutting and locking the door. She was visibly upset and shaken, so I asked what's wrong. Her voice trembling, she said that our neighbor said this, completely unprompted. "You know, if I were you, I'd keep your daughter away from guys like me." Now, while I will never know exactly what he meant by this, my mind definitely had plenty of ideas of what the fuck he meant by this. At the very least, it felt like a thinly veiled threat. And the worst part was that I was often home alone, as I did online school while my mom went to work. So from then on, I never felt safe when I was home alone, as my imagination ran wild on what he might end up doing to me. Now, I never thought I would say this kind of thing, and I feel a little guilty about it, but thankfully he ended up dying before he ever did follow through on his creepy-ass comment. Also, before anyone asks, my mom only told me about this because she wanted to warn me to stay the fuck away from him, and to never do anything like keep the door unlocked. She didn't have to tell me twice. TLD, a creepy next-door neighbor told my mom to keep 12-year-old me away from guys like him. Still creeps me out all these years later. Story 22. The time my brother and I saw a creepy man on our lawn. This is something that happened to me when I was around 7 years old, and it's been on my mind a lot lately. I wanted to share it because it's one of those memories that never fully leaves you, even if it's a little blurry now. So, my younger brother, who was 6 at the time, and I were hanging out in my bedroom. We were on my bed eating candy and watching YouTube on our iPad, pretty much what we did every chance we got back then. Our house was 2 stories, and my room had a window facing the front yard. At some point, I think I was the one who glanced outside, and that's when I saw him. There was an old man standing on our lawn, smoking a cigarette. I don't remember what he was wearing, but I can still picture him standing near the porch. The thing is, I could only see him from the side. I never fully saw his face. Now, here's the part that really shook me. I knew for a fact that our front door wasn't locked. My siblings and I were supposed to lock the door when we got home from school, but we almost never did because we live in a safe neighborhood and nothing bad ever happened, so it didn't seem like a big deal until it suddenly was. My brother and I freaked out and immediately ran down the hall to our older brother's room. He was probably around 14 or 15 at the time, completely absorbed in his Xbox. We burst in, scared and desperate for him to help, and told him what we saw. And you know what he did? Absolutely nothing. I remember he seemed confused at first, but then he shrugged it off and told us it was probably one of our dad's friends. Which, thinking back, made 0 sense. I don't even remember if I brought it up to my dad, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't one of his friends. If it was, he would have reassured me back then, and I feel like I wouldn't still be this unsettled about it. My older brother didn't lock the door, didn't check to see if the guy was still there, and definitely didn't grab anything for protection. He just wanted to get back to his game. He reassured us in the laziest way possible, then kicked us out of his room. And because we were little kids who trusted him, we tried to convince ourselves that everything was fine. We didn't look out the window again. Honestly, we were too scared. We ended up hiding under the covers in my room and pretending like it never happened. We just went back to watching YouTube. Nothing bad happened that day. No break-ins, no scary aftermath. But to this day, I wonder who that man was and why he was there. Part of me wishes I could go back and demand a real answer from my older brother, but at this point, I doubt he even remembers it. So yeah, that's the story. Moral of it all? Maybe just lock your doors. Safe neighborhood or not, you never know who might show up on your lawn. And to the man whoever you were, let's not meet. Story 23. Lady doing ritual outside my hotel room. Okay, for reference, I am staying at a very luxurious resort in Hawaii, not a place I have my guard up. This happened last night. I have a little patio that you can only access through a small path that isn't easy to find. I'm trying to say it's very out of the way to end up on this patio, and it's surrounded by plants, not a place you just wonder. I woke up to pee at 1 a.m. and the moonlight was illuminating my bathroom. I see a flicker in the moonlight and think, someone just walked behind me outside, and that's when I see a woman on my patio crouch down and neatly place her shoes on the floor. I could hear the soles hit the tile. She then disrobes except for her underwear, stares straight up to the moon and starts doing these erratic hand movements to the sky. I was so out of it that I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She did this for about 15 minutes, and then when I checked back she left. My room was pitch black, so I don't think she could see in, but I peed, closed the bathroom door, and coughed in an attempt to announce my presence, and nothing. I'm pretty freaked out. Any idea what could have happened? Story 24. Reckless kids. This story is so old, but I was thinking about it recently. I'll try to keep it short. So, back in 2016, I was 17 years old. I was doing what most 17-year-olds did, and I considered myself quite the pothead. So, one day me and a group of my friends went to the mall and just did stupid kid things. We eventually were over it because we didn't have any money, so we ended up taking the bus down to the park. Once we got to the park, we started smoking and one of my friends pulled out needles and started piercing some of the girls' ears. This was a normal occurrence. I got my nose pierced in the school bathroom by her. Not good, I know. Anyway, we're doing all this, eating snacks and listening to music. Some geese come up to us and we're having a good time. Out of the corner of my eye I see a guy nearby, but I didn't think much of it and neither did anyone else. One of my friends literally said, "Oh my God, he's doing yoga, how beautiful." Turns out he was not doing yoga. Slowly, but surely he starts getting closer to us. I noticed it but thought I was just being paranoid because I was high as giraffe titties. He keeps looking at us and then looking at his phone, but I'm not trying to scare anybody. Something deep in my gut was like, this is weird. Eventually he gets on his phone and starts talking to someone, but I can't hear him because he's still kind of far away from us. While he's talking on the phone, he keeps looking back at us. In my head, I'm like, oh my god, what if he's like calling the police because this group of kids is sitting in the park very obviously smoking weed? I would have rather dealt with the police than this guy. I tell the girls and they're all like, we gotta get out of here, so I'm like, yeah, let's go. I didn't know they'd be fucking leaving me alone. The sun starts to go down and this guy is still watching us. One by one everyone is walking away to their designated bus stops. Eventually, I'm the only one left at the park entrance and it's almost pitch black outside. It was around 8:30 p.m., maybe even 9 p.m. during the springtime. Dude is still there, so I get my phone out and call another friend's mom. This friend wasn't there, and at this point I'm begging her to speed to this park, 10-minute drive from her house. She was kind of frustrated with me because I was kind of rushing her, and now I know that it sounded really rude on my end. Why the fuck did a blacked out car pull up and the guy went to it, and they sat there for a little while? So now I'm beyond paranoid. I was thinking of all the shit that I could do to these people. I didn't see who else was in the car, but I know 17-year-old me probably could have taken a yoga guy unless he had a weapon or something. It was the longest 3 minutes of my life, from the time the car pulled up to my friend's mom pulling up. I just about jumped through the window to get into that fucking car. In retrospect, it could have been absolutely nothing, but I still remember how fucking terrified I was because a girl from my school, my now boyfriend's niece, had just almost got kidnapped outside of the school. She ended up jumping out of the car and she's fine now. Story 25. The creepy wheelchair lady. Okay, this was many years ago, so my memory is a bit hazy, but from what I remember, me and my mom had just gotten home, and where I lived we were settled right in front of a small park area and an apartment building behind it. I was about 12 at the time and had gotten out of the car when suddenly I spotted an elderly woman sitting in a wheelchair in the middle of the park. She was just staring at me with an ugly grin on her face. After a few seconds she gestures for me to come closer, saying, "Come here. Come here." I was reluctant at first but took a few steps forward before I saw a taller man dressed in all black coming out from a bush and heading in my direction. I quickly ran back to my house before he could do anything. After that day I never saw those two again, and I still don't know who these people were or why they wanted me. Human trafficking attempt maybe? Nonetheless, I'd love to hear some theories about this.